Hello, my name is Nicole Maika-St, and for my Women's Studies final project, I will be focusing on gender and sexual discrimination. The main question that we have focused on this semester is, what is gender? Most commonly, gender is described as two different sexes that we know as female and male. More so, it can also be thought of as a social and cultural differences rather than biological ones, which means there is a range of identities that do not correspond to the female and male sex. Another main topic that can easily be confused is gender discrimination and sexual discrimination. Gender discrimination is the prejudice or discrimination based on the person's sex. For example, the gender gap, also called the wage gap, that discriminates against women and pays them less than men for working the same amount. Sexual discrimination is discrimination that is based on an individual's sexual orientation. For example, unlawful or inappropriate touching and even unwelcome sexual advances. According to Leigh Wolf, the author of Sex Discrimination at Work, including example and legal issues, Wolf states, according to company policy, a woman may be entitled to the same perks, advancements, pay, and other benefits as her male counterpart, but behavior towards her in the workplace may be untenable and is usually related to her gender. Moving on to the history of sexual and gender discrimination. What has been done to help eliminate this conflict of the sexes? In the 1960s, the women's liberation movement took hold to allow more freedom and career choices for women everywhere around the world. This also included the approval of birth control pills, which was a very big victory for working women. However, after these events, sexual harassment and gender discrimination started to escalate, especially in the workplace. In order to add protection to this movement, the Title V of the 1964 Civil Rights Act was placed, and thus states, prohibits employment discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. One of the most popular and violent sexual harassment allegations are in the workplace. Since the workplace can be anything and anywhere from both genders, I want to include a little fact check on gender and sexual discrimination in the workplace. Shown here is a graph comparing men's and women's experiences with workplace gender discrimination throughout the years. Starting in 2017, 58% of women have been reported being discriminated against because of their gender. Compared to men, only 22% have reported discrimination. Throughout the years, women have doubled or tripled the amount of gender discrimination taking place in the workplace. However, in 2020, the statistics were very low because of the COVID-19 pandemic, unfortunately putting hundreds and thousands of people out of work. Sadly, over 235 million women have experienced gender discrimination at work, which is about 81%, with about 75% of all workplace sexual harassments go unreported. However, not all of the gender discriminations came out as negative. During the 21st century, workplace gender and sexual discrimination have led paths to new laws, including the LGBTQ community, transsexuals, and transgender identities. Remember, gender and sexual discrimination can range from all different types of things, including assault, sexual harassment, non-consensual touching, etc. In the bigger picture, we must think about the main goal or outcome, and in order to get there, we must go through a few counter steps, including the protection of women's rights, eliminating sexual discrimination, and finally, achieving gender equality. How does gender and sexual discrimination relate to women's studies? First off, knowing about gender discrimination helps women learn about their rights and what they could do if this has ever occurred. Secondly, this allows not just women, but anyone that is fighting against gender and sexual discrimination. And lastly, it will lead the world on the right path to equal pay and hopefully gender equality. A website that I found very helpful is called equalrights.org, and it helps you know your rights and gives you a little insight into stopping sexual harassment or discrimination. Thank you. If there are any questions, please contact me through my email listed. Lastly, here are my works cited and references.